Hello. Hope you made it through the storms these past few days. Pretty crazy stuff. I'm doing this on Thursday, and of course Wednesday evening we had a tornado watch right over the church, right over my house. It was a little scary there, but we're all safe now, I hope. And we're going to be going on to the second chapter of Daniel. Some of this I'm going to just kind of summarize, and some I'm going to read. Because there's some, inherent kind of repetitiveness that we don't have to read every word to get the gist of what's going on. And I'll start out with, again, kind of summarizing the first few verses of chapter 2. Okay. King Nebuchadnezzar is having these dreams, and these dreams are disturbing him greatly. He can't sleep, he's troubled, and they're driving him nuts. So he wants to get together the magicians, the sorcerers, the enchanters, and the Chaldeans to interpret the dream. Now, he interprets the dream. He wants them to interpret the dream, but he's not going to tell them what the dream is. They're going to come into his court, and Nebuchadnezzar is going to say, "You tell me what the dream was and what it means." They're saying, the magicians and the sorcerers and etc. are saying, "No, king, you tell us what the dream is and we'll tell you what it means." The king is saying, "No, you tell me what the dream is. I'm not going to tell you. And if you don't tell me what the dream is, what I dreamed, we're going to tear you limb from limb, and we're going to burn down your house, and it's not going to be too pleasant." And but the sorcerers and magicians are saying, "Well, no one has the power to be able to not to tell you what your dream is. We may have the power to tell you what the dream means, but you got to tell us first what the dream is." And Nebuchadnezzar is saying, no, that's not how it's going to work. So, of course, Nebuchadnezzar, because he is the king and the ruthless king, right, decides to kill everybody, to kill the sorcerers and the magicians and the Chaldeans, the enchanters, all these people, kill them all because they're not following his ruling, his command. At that point, we find out that Daniel and his friends are included in the people that are going to be killed. So now Daniel has a real stake in trying to figure this out. So Daniel says, responded with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the king's chief executioner, who had gone out to execute the wise men of Babylon. He asked Arioch, the king, the royal official, "Why is the decree of the king so urgent?" Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. So Daniel went in and requested that the king give him time, and he would tell the king the interpretation. And Daniel went to his home and informed his companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions and the rest of the wise men of Babylon might not perish. And the mystery was revealed to Daniel in the vision of the night. And Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel said, "Blessed be the name of God from age to age, for wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons, deposes kings and sets up kings, and gives wisdom to the wise, and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. To you, O God of my ancestors, I give thanks and praise. For you have given me wisdom and power, and have now revealed to me what he asked of you. For you have revealed to us what the king ordered." So God has given Daniel the dream and the interpretation of the dream. The magicians couldn't do it. The Chaldeans couldn't do it, whoever. But God, because God is all-powerful and the true God, was able to tell Daniel what Nebuchadnezzar's dream was and what it meant. Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, "Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will give the king the interpretation." Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said to him, "I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who can tell the king the interpretation." The king said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, "Are you able to tell me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation?" And Daniel answered the king, "No wise men, enchanters, magicians, or diviners can show to the king the mystery that the king is asking. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has disclosed to King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen at the end of days." So that's what the dream is about for Daniel. And to you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts of what would be hereafter, and the revealer of mysteries disclosed to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me because of any wisdom that I have more than any other living being, but in order that the interpretation may be known to the king, that you may understand the thoughts of your mind. So God's giving Nebuchadnezzar a gift through Daniel of explaining this very troubling dream. Now, the dream is about these four kingdoms, and we have an interpretation of what these four kingdoms are, remembering that the book of Daniel was written probably in the 100s BC, not in the time frame that the book is set, which is several hundred years earlier. It's important to know that the kingdoms we're talking about are kingdoms that are relatable to the people in the time frame of the writing of the book, not the historical content of the book. Okay. You were looking, O king, and lo, there was a great statue. The statue was huge, its brilliance extraordinary. It was standing before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of that statue was of fine gold, one kingdom. His chest and arms of silver, another kingdom. Its middle and thigh of bronze. Again, he's speaking of a third kingdom. Its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Okay, so we got this mixture at the very bottom, iron and clay. And you looked on the stone stone, and as you looked on, a stone was cut out, not by human hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them to pieces. And the iron, the clay, the bronze, and silver, and the gold were all broken in pieces, and it became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away. So this big stone broke it to pieces, broke it to dust. So not a trace of them could be found. So all these kingdoms were going to be demolished, conquered, ended. The stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So you get the idea that this is not a normal stone. It's a godly stone, a divine stone, a holy stone. This was a dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. Your king, the King of Kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the might, and the glory. To whose hands he has given human beings, wherever they live, the wild animals of the field and the birds of the air, and whom he has established as ruler over them all. You are the head of gold. Okay, so God, Daniel follows kind of a pattern we see in the Old Testament where kingdoms are divinely granted to people. So even though Nebuchadnezzar was not Jewish, it's up to God to make sure that Nebuchadnezzar becomes the king, and it's God's rule and God's will that Nebuchadnezzar became the king, even though it was a foreign land. Okay. After you shall arise another kingdom inferior to you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over the whole earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, just as iron crushes, smashes everything. It shall crush and shatter all these. As you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom, but some of the strength of the iron shall be in it, as you saw the iron mixed with the clay. So getting to one of my commentaries here, what we're talking about here is then four kingdoms. The kingdoms are the Babylonian kingdom. Of course, Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. The second kingdom, the silver one, Medes. The bronze one, the Persians. And the last one was the Greek kingdom. Now, the Greek kingdom, which was after the death of Alexander the Great in 323, the kingdom was broken up into smaller kingdoms. They were divided, which gives you the idea of it being iron and clay. The biggest division was that the Seleucid dynasty and the Ptolemaic dynasty, there's a marriage between the Seleucid and Ptolemaic empires. There is one of these royal marriages to try to unite the kingdoms. So that is the idea about it being mixed between clay and iron. It wasn't just one kingdom, it was a joining of two, a marriage of two. So what we have here then is the mixing of iron and clay, which again is not as strong as just iron, which is why the destruction of the statue starts at the bottom at the weakest point. So we have then these four kingdoms. the Babylonian, Median, Persian, and the Greek, which is really just the Ptolemaic and the Seleucid dynasties put together. So, but what Daniel is saying is you have these four kingdoms, and he's hoping that this last Greek kingdom is going to fall, and that God is going to take over with the kingdom of God. That these are all human kingdoms in succession, but God's kingdom can crush them all. You know, that's why we have this stone, large stone that breaks everything. That's God breaking, again, says breaking forth his kingdom and his rule, which is that mountain, the strong mountain. And it says here, as the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. So again, the Seleucids and the Ptolemies. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. That again is symbolized by the stone. Nor shall this kingdom be left to another people. It shall crush all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from the mountain, not by hands, and that crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The great God has informed the king what shall be hereafter. The dream is certain, and its interpretation trustworthy. Okay. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, worshipped Daniel, and commanded that a grain offering and incense be offered to him. That's how a king thanks a person. The king said to Daniel, truly your God is God of gods, the King of kings, and a reveler of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. He's praising God too, but he knows that what Daniel says is that this really wasn't Daniel's idea. It was God's revelation. Then the king promoted Daniel, gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request to the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel remained as the king's court. So Daniel, because he's blessed by God, has found favor with King Nebuchadnezzar and is given these high positions of power and wealth and authority. Okay, so that ends chapter 2. And next week we'll go into chapter 3. Want to read ahead? That'd be great. See you then.